Welcome, everyone. My name is Andrew. I'm the founder and owner of Ibis Prep. And tonight is a great night because we are officially starting bar preparation for the February 2025 bar exam. And we're starting with Florida, the Sunshine State. I was born in Miami, Florida in 1989. And I love this bar exam because it's really tough and I like a good challenge. But I was telling the class before the recording started that even though Florida Part A is notoriously difficult, mostly all of my students pass. And I think it's actually even more passable than the MBE. It's just more difficult, but more passable. And that makes sense by the end of the course. You just have to, know how to write the essays. You have to have some exposure to the multiple choice questions, and you'll do just fine. We start off with contracts. It's a fair deal. Contracts is a subject that I think is easy to teach, easy to learn, and we want to master and write great essays. It also has a really great mnemonic, right? The mnemonic that I teach is buy friends drinks, big drinks, right? I'm going to do a PowerPoint, but I just want to start off with that. Buy friends drinks, big drinks. And that's a good motto to live by. Even if you don't like to drink alcohol, maybe it's a big Dr. Pepper or something at the ball game, but let's really buy our friends big drinks. And what does that mnemonic stand for? Well, B stands for body of law. Is it going to be UCC or common law? That's a really important question. UCC for goods, common law for services. So B is body of law. The F is for formation, offer, acceptance, consideration, right? This is a common understanding, but we want to make sure when we're writing a contract essay that we get all these pieces incorporated. So body of law comes first, UCC versus common law. Formation comes next, offer, acceptance, and consideration. And then D stands for defenses. So buy friends drinks, the D is defenses. And what's the most common defense that we'll see? Statute of frauds, right? Statute of frauds. And I'll teach you a lot of mnemonics because when I first started studying for the bar and other exams, I wasn't really big on mnemonics because I kind of was like, well, I'm memorizing all these weird words and now it's too much to memorize. But as I've gotten more experience with teaching, I find that it really helps because it just triggers like, okay, I write about this, then I write about that, then I write about that. And so like if these mnemonics go right over your head, that's fine. But for a lot of people, they will resonate. So when we do statute of frauds, which is the first offense, we know the mnemonic my legs, right? There's certain contracts that must be in writing and signed by the party to be charged. These contracts include, and then the my legs mnemonic, contracts in consideration of marriage, contracts that cannot be completed within 1 year, contracts for land, executorships, goods over $500, and suretyships. That's a common mnemonic we all know. And if I'm going fast right now, I have a whole PowerPoint. I'm going to slow down. I'm just like trying to, start off with some interesting stuff to learn. And the my legs mnemonic, everyone knows that. If you went to law school, you studied contracts for 2 days, you learned my legs, right? There's statute of frauds. Some contracts need to be in writing and signed by the party to be charged. They apply to the my legs mnemonic. Now, an additional mnemonic that I teach my students because I really want us to squeeze all the, lemon, all the juice out of the lemon is the swap mnemonic. And this applies to the exception to the statute of frauds. So swap, SWAPP. The swap mnemonic is for contracts that seem like they should be in writing, but they're actually exceptions. And that's swap, specially manufactured goods, right? Like if it's a necklace that's got my initials in it and a little picture of my dog or something. And then W would be the written confirmatory memo. So, if there's an email or some writing that follows an oral conversation between merchants under the UCC, then sure, that's an exception to the statute of frauds. The A is for admission in court. Sure, if you admit something in court under oath, then it doesn't necessarily need to be in writing. You admit it to the existence of the contract. And then the two P's are for promissory estoppel and partial performance. Promissory estoppel, we're thinking of detrimental reliance and things of that nature. And then partial performance, for land, maybe it would be payment, possession, or improvement, something of that nature. But those are some good mnemonics to know, and I'll teach these, I'll reinforce these, but I just really want people to master this stuff. And this is all in my book. This is all in my materials. This is all in our cheat sheets. But we start with that. So the mnemonic is by friends, drinks, big drinks. The B is body of law. UCC versus common law. The F is formation, offer acceptance consideration. The D is for defenses. The first defense is statute of frauds, and we remember the my legs mnemonic and the swap mnemonic. And then there's plenty of other defenses to contract formation. Does anyone know what any of them are? Some other defenses to contract formation?
Mistake.
Yeah, mistake, mutual or unilateral mistake. A mutual mistake will, usually lead to rescission of the contract because there was no meeting of the minds. Whereas a unilateral mistake would be the mistaken party would have to bear the burden of their mistake unless the non-mistaken party knew of the mistaken party's mistake and essentially took advantage of them. But that's a good conversation. Mistake, mutual versus unilateral, statute of frauds. Does anyone else know any other defenses to contract formation or execution?
Duress.
Yeah, duress is a good one. Duress, like, a threat. They were, hey, sign this contract or I'll, beat you up. Yeah, Pablo's saying illegality, right? If we make a contract to sell illegal drugs. Grace is saying incapacity. Sure, incapacity. They're too young, they're too drunk, right? They're intoxicated or they're too immature. Sean is saying undue influence. Solid. So the difference between undue influence and duress. Duress is a threat. I'm going to beat you up if you don't sign the contract. Undue influence is unequal bargaining power. It's a position of power. It's abuse of a position. Like, let's say they're a guardian and elderly person. That would be undue influence. Whereas duress is like, someone threatening them. What are some other defenses we could think of? Mistake,
Frustration of
misrepresentation.
purpose.
Yeah. Lauren's saying mistake, misrepresentation. We already said mistake, but misrepresentation, sure. Misrepresentation, fraud, those are like, you're deceiving someone. And then what were you saying? Undue or frustration of purpose?
Yeah,
like
frustration of purpose, impossibility, and practicality, those three.
Yeah, let's call that the Three Musketeers, right? So no one's ever called it that. Don't call it that. So impossibility, impracticality, and frustration of purpose. Let me explain those a little bit. Impossibility means it's impossible for the contract to be completed. Like, let's say is to sell you a car and then the car is, destroyed in a fire. It's impossible to deliver the car. Impracticability means it's very difficult. Like, it's usually related to increase of price. Like, I'm going to deliver this corn and then, the price of me getting the corn goes up dramatically. Well, I can still get it. I just have to pay a lot of money. It usually comes down to whether it was foreseeable or not. And then frustration of purpose. Two examples I give are like, one is boxing. You'll see I do a lot of boxing examples. I have certain things that I like: dogs, boxing, football. So let's say there's a contract to have Tommy versus Johnny for the heavyweight championship of the world. But then, they declare Steven the heavyweight champion. And it's like, even if Tommy and Johnny fought each other, Steven's the heavyweight champion anyway. So there's really no point to have Tommy and Johnny fight. So then we would say, okay, the purpose has been frustrated. It's not impossible. It's not impracticable. We can still have the fight. It's just the purpose for why we were going to have the fight has been frustrated. Another example I give is the wedding venue. You have a contract with a venue to host a wedding. Then before the wedding, sometimes they don't make it, right? Tommy and Susie fight before the wedding, after the ring, but before the wedding they fight. So they're not going to get married anymore. They break up. Well, now the wedding venue, they still have a contract with the venue, and it's not impractical or impossible to have the wedding. It's just the purpose of them getting married has now been frustrated because they're no longer lovers, right? So those are good ones: impossibility, impracticability, and frustration of purpose. Diana's saying unconscionability. Yeah, we have procedural and substantive unconscionability. Substantive unconscionability, it means that let's say I agree to tutor you for $1 million, right? Like, that's pretty unconscionable. I mean, I know my rates have been going up in recent years, but $1 million is a lot of money. You would have to be a fool to pay $1 million per hour to get tutored by me. Let's delete that from the record because maybe one day. Procedural unconscionability is a lot like undue influence, where it's just like there was some unequal bargaining power between the parties. Yeah, unconscionability, just like the contract shouldn't be enforced. It's just ridiculous. Any other examples of defenses? I think an illusory contract, maybe. Does anyone know what an illusory contract is?
When there's not really an exchange.
Yeah, it's like an empty promise. Like, I'll tutor you when I feel like it. Hate to tell you, I never feel like it. It's my job. Yeah, Sean's saying age minority. Yeah, I would call that incapacity. Anything else we could think of? Defenses to formation. I mean, we talked about it in the game, in the Jeopardy game, like maybe latches, unclean hands. Uh, anything else? Acquiescence. Digging deep there. All right. Cool. So we have, remember the mnemonic, buy friends drinks. What kind of drinks? Does anyone remember what kind?
Big drinks.
There we go, big drinks. And the next B is going to stand for breach. People forget to talk about that. Breach is important. Who breached the contract? Did they fail to deliver the goods? Did they not show up and sing the song? We know there's a breach, right? And was it material or immaterial? Was there an anticipatory repudiation? Was there something of that nature? So the second B stands for breach. Body of law, formation, defenses, breach, and then the last D, what does that stand for? Does anyone know?
Damages.
Damages, exactly. And that's a really simple outline for a contracts essay. Body of law, formation, defenses, breach, damages. And there's two types of damages in contract law. There's legal relief and equitable relief. Legal relief is monetary. That's, you know, pesos, yen, whatever you want to say. It's money damages. That's the way we really try to remedy people in modern society. You know, just most people, if you've wronged them, you pay them, all things are equal. And that's kind of how contract law usually goes. So legal relief, the main form of legal relief is going to be expectation damages, which will put the non-breaching party in the position they would have been if the contract had been performed. Then there's consequential damages. Consequential damages are appropriate for damages that were foreseeable in light of a breach. And there's incidental damages. Incidental damages are damages that are recoverable for attempting to mitigate the breach. Like you drove and got gas to like try and get a new job or something. So we should always write about expectation, consequential, incidental. Then there's nominal damages and name only. We talked about liquidated damages that are contemplated ahead of time because they'd be too speculative in light of a breach. There's reliance damages. We talked about restitution to disgorge ill-gotten gains. By the way, Nat, when I said that's my rapper name, ill-gotten gains. You're all supposed to come up with like my album was called Restitution. My name was Ill-Gotten Gains. It used to be cool back in the day when things were cooler.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, don't worry. You could do like a country album.
You have to see mine. Like it's the coolest.
Yeah,
Fine.
Grace is good. And Grace is an MBE student who passed the MBE, and now she's about to pass Florida bar. She scored in the 130s last time. She's from Puerto Rico, and she has a daughter. Grace is killing it, one of our top students. I know this is it. And you're doing a great job on social media too. I like that you're like posting about your journey. We're all doing that this time to show everyone the amazing journey. So okay, so we have buy friends drinks, big drinks. We have damages. Damages could be legal or monetary, expectation, consequential, incidental, nominal, liquidated, reliance, restitution, lost wages, lost profits. These are all forms of legal relief. You really don't think that ill-gotten gains is a cool rapper name, Nat? What's your legal artist name?
I haven't made that.
Not that easy, right? You gotta give me some credit. Okay, then we're gonna talk about equitable relief. Equitable relief is like court order relief. Relief that's like, the court is going to just enforce in in the name of justice. Specific performance is the main type, right, that we see, like for land or for art or for unique goods, we're gonna have specific performance. We could also have reformation, which is to like modify or edit the contract to fit the intent of the parties. We could have rescission, which is to like put the parties in the position they were before the contract. It's like there's a mutual mistake, so we'll just rip up the contract under rescission theory. Promissory estoppel, you know, kind of reliance related to detrimental reliance. A quasi contract, which is like a court ordered contract. It could be a quasi contract in restitution. Some of these concepts kind of overlap each other. Yeah, these are different, injunction, right? There can be injunctive relief. These are different types of equitable relief. So yeah, that's pretty much the backbone outline. You should pretty much write about that on every contracts essay, is like body of law, formation, defenses, breach, and damages. Any questions so far? Someone asked me, what's the swap mnemonic? Specially manufactured goods, written confirmatory memo, admission in court, promissory estoppel, and partial performance. When I write these essays, I write them very formulaically. Like I could take the bar exam in my sleep, you know, obviously like, it's like, and she's laughing, but my other essay is laughing, but it's like, yeah, like a vet could, you know, fix a dog in their sleep, or like a golfer can make an easy putt in their sleep. It's just like, this isn't that hard if you just master it. And the reason I'm saying that is all these essays are formulaic. You see the essay and you're like, okay, the first, right, they're always IRACs, but I teach the IRAOC method. Issue, rule, analysis, opposing argument, conclusion. Issue, rule, analysis, opposing argument, conclusion. It's very formulaic. The first issue is whether there is a contract. A contract is an agreement between two or more parties in which there's a valid remedy at law. Here, Tommy will argue that there is a contract because the two parties XYZ, Susie will argue there was no contract because it wasn't a clear and unequivocal manifestation to enter into the contract. However, on balance, the court will likely find there is a contract. The next issue is whether the contract will be governed by the UCC or by common law. Contracts for goods are governed under the UCC. Contracts for land and services are governed under common law. Goods are all things movable. Here, since the contract is for golf balls are a good, therefore the contract is likely governed by the UCC. This is one of my favorite sayings to use. It is important to note. I say that all the time in my essays. It is important to note because it allows you to just say things that like you may or may not get points for. But remember, this is a rubric rated essay. For those of you who are coming from the UBE or California, those essays are much more contrite. They're much shorter. They're much more concise. Where these Florida essays, you want to elaborate a lot more. So I would say it is important to note. It is important to note that Tommy is a golf shop owner and Susie is a professional golfer because there are special rules that apply to merchants under the UCC. These special rules include, and then I would be like the firm offer rule, the confirmatory memo rule, the battle of forms provision. Like, I would just say the things and then I would get back on pace. Like, in order for there to be a contract, there must be an offer, acceptance, and consideration. And then I would define them. Susie will argue that, the next issue is whether there are any defenses that may apply. The first defense Susie will argue is the statute of frauds. Under the statute of frauds, there are certain issues that must be in writing and signed by the party to be charged. These contracts include contracts for marriage, contracts for land, contracts that cannot be completed within 1 year, executorships, goods over $500 and suretyship. Here, since the contract is for golf balls worth $5,000, it must be in writing. However, there are certain contracts that are exceptions to the statute of frauds, including specially manufactured goods, written confirmatory memo, admission in court, promissory estoppel, and partial performance. Here, Tommy will argue that the golf balls were specially manufactured for Susie, or Susie will argue, whatever, whoever will argue they're specially manufactured with their, initial, therefore the statute of fraud arguments will likely fail, right? Like you just kind of keep it moving. They're all very much the same. And then after you get through that, Johnny will argue that Susie breached the contract when he refused to pay. Maybe it's anticipatory repudiation. You just kind of march through it, and then you'll talk about the damages. I often tell people, write about the damages first. You know you're going to write about damages, but people run out of time. You could write your essay where you write your 5th paragraph first down at the bottom, and then you fill it all in, and the reader's not going to know that. But you don't want to like not write about damages. So you could just ahead of time be like, for breach of contract claims, there are 2 types of damages, legal and equitable. Legal relief is monetary, equitable relief is court imposed. Legal relief includes expectation, consequential, and incidental. The most common forms of equitable relief are specific performance, reformation, and rescission, period. And then go back up and write your essay. And then when you get to the bottom, you can just put in here, Tommy will argue for expectation damages, like boom, boom, boom. Alternatively, Tommy will argue for specific, right? You just want to like get the points if I haven't made that clear enough. All right, so I'm gonna just teach a little bit from my PowerPoint and then we'll call it a night. I don't want to overwhelm people, but like this is just day 1, chapter 1, verse 1, right? So welcome to class, December 2nd, 2024. I can't believe we made it. This is the information, ibisprep.com. We are doing a sale today and today only, 25% off our services, so you can do some tutoring with my amazing tutors. I'm here, getting older. This is, what was this, 2016? So that was 8 years ago, and I graduated law school. I did my JD MBA at the University of Miami. This is my grandfather. He also graduated from the University of Miami School of Law, and my father all graduated from the Miami School of Law. So go Canes, even though our football team kind of blew it this weekend. How do we do write essays? You know, like I said, IRAOC, issue, rule, analysis, opposing argument, conclusion. You want to do active issue spotting. So you read the essay, you spot all the issues, take notes, highlight, make it very formulaic, make headings, bold things out, make it easy for the reader to give you points, make it uniform. Don't recite the facts. You know, you could just say, see earlier, right? You don't get points for reciting facts, although you have to incorporate them a little bit. Be Florida specific, so talk about in Florida as much as you can. Like, did anyone know another contract that must be in writing in Florida besides just the typical my legs ones? It starts with a G, I think. Well, actually, it starts with whatever you want to start with. Does anyone know another type of contract that must be in writing in Florida?
Wasn't it like a newspaper subscriptions?
Newspaper subscriptions actually historically do need to be. Fair enough. That's not what I was thinking of, but I'll give you a point there. See if the chat room booming. Yeah, someone's saying healthcare. Yeah, healthcare guarantees, right? See, Libby, you should take the test. You know more than you think, right? Like healthcare guarantees. If you you know, you're gonna get this benefit for healthcare, that needs to be in writing. Whatever. That's an in Florida specific rule. You don't need to rewrite rules. You could just say see above, supra, infra. Yeah, separate IRACs. Make as many IRACs as you can. You know, I like torts. That's my favorite subject. You just spot as many torts as you can, as many claims of action, write the issue, the rule, analysis, conclusion, keep it moving. Contracts is more of like this like outline that I kind of taught everyone. So yeah, there's tons of contracts. It's tested often. It can be tested with other subjects like contracts, torts, contracts, real property, contracts, ethics. You should definitely study contracts. I told you this is kind of the layout, right? Define the type of contract and the parties involved. So this is in my book. I really encourage everyone to read the first chapter of my book this, you know, tonight, tomorrow. There's different types of contracts: installment contracts, requirements contracts, output contracts, unilateral contracts, bilateral contracts, quasi contracts, right? Like identify what type of contract, and then identify the parties involved. Are they merchants? Are they regular Joe Schmoes? Are they minors? Because then when they turn of age, they can ratify the contract, things of that nature. Contract formation. You should all have pretty solid definitions of offer, acceptance, consideration, right? An offer is a manifestation of intent to be bound by the contract in a way that gives the power of acceptance and the offeree. And acceptance is an intent to be bound by the contract, a mutual assent to the contract, you know, mutual assent, intent to be bound, meeting of the minds. And consideration is a bargain for exchange of legal detriment or value in Florida. Defenses to contract formation, including statute of frauds, and you know, defenses to execution. When I say that defenses to formation and defenses to execution, the difference is that like defenses to formation would be like lack of consideration, illegality, incapacity, like the contract wasn't properly formed. Defenses to execution would be like impossibility, impracticality, or frustration of purpose. Like the contract is validly formed, it's just for some reason it shouldn't be executed. And we talked about material, like that goes to the heart of the contract, versus immaterial, that's something smaller that wouldn't give rise to like rescission or, total relief. And then legal versus equitable. Legal is monetary, equitable is ordered. Some basics for contracts essays. Contracts is an agreement between two or more parties, which are adequate remedies at law. You guys can all see my screen, right, by the way? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
A contract can be unilateral or bilateral. A unilateral contract can be accepted by performance, whereas a bilateral contract requires proper contract formation. A good example of a unilateral contract is like a sign that says like reward if you find my dog, and it's $1,000. Well, if I show up with a dog, you got to give me $1,000. I have accepted by performance. Contracts are governed by the UCC for goods, common law for land and services. Mixed contract will apply the predominant purpose test, right? Whatever predominates the contract will apply that. You could also argue for divisibility of contract. That's a type of contract, a divisible contract. We'll get into these things on Wednesday, don't worry. Under common law, the terms of the acceptance must match the terms of the offer exactly. We call that the mirror image test. Under the UCC, we use the ballot of forms provision, which states that an additional term will be included as long as it does not materially affect the contract. And it's important to note that both parties are merchants because there are special rules that apply to merchants under the UCC. I talked about some of them, like the firm offer rule, the requirement to have 30 days to respond to a request for further assurances, the written confirmatory memo rule, things like that. So offer, we talked about a manifestation of intent to enter into a contract. Acceptance is a manifestation of intent to enter a contract as well, right? By any reasonable means. Under UCC, acceptance can be for shipment of non-conforming goods. This is more of an MBE concept. I won't even really get into this, but like you can accept a contract if it's a prompt shipment by shipment of non-conforming goods, and then you have accepted and subsequently breached because of the perfect tender rule. However, if you include a notice of accommodation, then it's actually a counteroffer. So that's a little bit of a nuance that, it's just worth mentioning. Some key buzzwords for contract formation: mutual assent, meeting of the minds, intent to be bound by the terms. Consideration is a bargain for exchange of legal detriment or value in Florida. And here's some language right from an essay. To have a contract, there must be offer, acceptance, consideration, no valid defenses. Here the facts state that there was a signed written contract between A&M, so it appears they are satisfied. The contract is for a term of 1 year, but because it's split up into separate payments and delivery dates each month, this would most likely be considered an installment contract. I mean, they get right to it. I write a little bit more elaborately because I want to make sure I get my points and such, but that's fair language from a February 2009 contract. Here are all the defenses we talked about: inadequate consideration, incapacity, illegality, illusory, impossibility, undue influence, fraud, duress, frustration of purpose, unconscionability, misrepresentation, mistake, mutual lateral, or against public policy. This is the only one we didn't mention, against public policy. You could say like an example would be like bribing a government official. That, what's wrong with that? Giving someone some money, there's a little, tutoring companies don't have to pay taxes. Like, no, you can't do that because that's against public policy. Statute of frauds we talked about, my legs. And then swap mnemonics, especially manufactured goods, written confirmatory memo, admission in court, partial performance, promissory estoppel, all really good stuff. You definitely should write about statute of frauds. I think statute of frauds comes up in like every single contracts essay. Here's some good language about breach. When determining a breach, it can be either material or minor. To determine if it's material or minor, you look to see if the non-breaching party received the benefit of the bargain. To determine that, you look to see how much benefit has been given, the likelihood the other party will perform, the cost the other party having to perform. If there's been a material breach of the contract that the non-breaching party does not have to perform their portion of the contract, then the non-breaching party does not have to perform their portion of the contract and will cover any damages they incur in order to mitigate or cover for the breaching party's breach. So mitigation is a key term. You should write that down, try to talk about that on your essays. Mitigation, or the cost of cover, which means like getting the goods in the open market. These are just some good terms. The more buzzwords and keywords you could use in your essay, the better you should do. See, someone in the chat is saying, okay. So damages, there's two types of damage. We talked about this: legal and equitable. Legal is expectation, consequential, incidental, reliance, restitution, lost profits, lost wages. Equitable is specific performance, injunctive, rescission, reformation, quasi-contract, promissory estoppel. When looking at damages, the court looks to put the parties in the position they would have been had the contract been fulfilled. A party has a duty to try and mitigate the damages. We see that buzzword again, mitigation. Here's some common issues on Florida bar essays, and don't worry, we'll go over this all. The good thing about the key subject, contracts, torts, con law, real property, Civ Pro even, I spend a whole week on them. So we do 2 lectures and a workshop. So we're gonna make sure you guys have mastered all this stuff. Non-competes, and this is under attack at the federal level. They're saying that non-competes may be may not be allowed anymore, but for now we'll still recognize that they're allowed in Florida so long as they're reasonable in subject matter, geographic scope, and duration. Installment contracts we talk about broken up in installments, and they'll have the opportunity to cure if there's a non-conforming shipment. Anticipatory repudiation we already talked about. If there's clear and unequivocal manifestation of an intent not to honor the obligations of the contract, clear and unequivocal, not like I might not do it. It has to be, I definitely won't do it. Parole evidence, and we'll talk about this a lot on Wednesday, but parole evidence means we're not going to allow oral conversations to contradict a fully integrated written contract, right? Like we're going to look at the 4 corners of the contract to see what are the terms of the contract, but there are some exceptions, right? Like defects in formation, or clarifying ambiguous terms, or to add an additional term, or customer trade usage, right? These are some exceptions to parole evidence. And then liquidated damages, we talked about, they have to be reasonable, they cannot operate as a penalty, and they're, written into the contract to anticipate damages ahead of time because they'd be too speculative in light of a breach. So I'm not sure these are the exact 2 essays I've assigned, but they might be. But yeah, you're gonna have 2 essay assignments this week. Usually I have a motivational quote or something, but maybe not today. Yeah, those are the essay assignments. So I have week 1 Florida contracts essays. It's gonna be February 2023, question 1, July 2016, question 1. You just click the essay and find it. It'll be the ones that say contracts, and then you write about Chipco and such. And then when you write the essay, you can just submit it. Like there's literally like a button in the right corner that says submit it. So here's students, submit the work, whatever. It's pretty easy to do. I would say honestly, because I teach a lecture on Monday and Wednesday, and then I do a workshop on Saturday, I'd probably wait until Sunday to write the essay, because we'll do the workshop, and by the end of the workshop, you should feel really confident in writing the essays. But just try to compartmentalize this thing. It's a tough test, but it's just one subject at a time. And if you're in my MBE course, we're doing contracts this week as well. So the goal for this week, compartmentalized, is just to really master contracts. And as an MBE subject, I think contracts is very difficult. As an essay subject, I think is really, really easy. Just kind of, go over all the essays that are given in the study guides, go over all the materials, try to master the language. You'll come to the lecture on Wednesday, and we'll go over everything even more carefully, and then we'll do a really deep dive during the Saturday workshop. And by then you should really feel comfortable that contracts essays are manageable and you should do well on them. There's some other subjects like real property and different types of con law that I think are more difficult. So with that in mind, you don't want to fall behind. Really try to master contracts this week. The last thing that I'll mention is, if we look at the calendar in the course. So if you kind of want to see, and like I said, I'm going to add the syllabus too, but right now we have the calendar. If you look at the December calendar, we have contracts this week, torts next week, and then con law, but then we take off a whole week for the holidays, the 23rd, and then even into the beginning of January. So we don't come back until the 4th. So, for contracts, torts, and con law, you will have some time over the holidays to kind of catch up if you fall behind on your essays. But after that, it moves really quick. Like the bar exam will be here before you know it, and we're doing subjects all the way up until the end. There's only 1 week of total review. So try to stay on top of the material as we go along. If you do feel like you're falling behind or you need additional help, working with a tutor is always my top recommendation. I really enjoyed being here tonight. And I know I just did a lot of lecturing. Over the course of the next few weeks, I'll get to know each and every one of you individually, and I look forward to that. But what I look forward to the most is your passing scores in April. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop this recording.